Welcome to another episode of Software Explorations, Concepts, and Overviews, hosted by yours truly, Tech Coach Ralph, where we are Engineer Twin. In today's episode, we are going to talk about BDD. What is BDD? Behavior-Driven Development. And with behavior-driven development, it shows us how to bridge the gap between business and technology. Bring them together so that we can have a smooth development experience, right? So let's jump into our presentation about BDD, and we can get started from there. All right, so like I said, behavior-driven development, how to bridge the gap between business and tech. Our agenda for today, we're going to talk about what exactly is BDD, talk about some of the definitions about it, like how it works. We're going to talk about the principles of BDD, the key components, the workflow for behavior-driven development, and the benefits of behavior-driven development. We're going to go over some of the tools and the frameworks, some real-world scenarios. What are some of the challenges and limitations that we face? What are the best practices? And then we're going to wrap it up with our conclusion. All right, so without further ado, let's jump right into it. So what is BDD? Behavior-driven development is a software development approach that aims to bridge the gap between technical and non-technical stakeholders by emphasizing collaboration and communication throughout the development process. And here, this is a image of how BDD typically works. So you're going to describe the behavior of what you're building. Then you're going to write step definitions, which we'll get into how those step definitions are written. Then you're going to run it, and then it's going to fail because there is no code written yet. Then once we run it and it fails, we're going to write the actual code that's going to make the step pass. And then when you run it again, it's going to pass. So this is like an extension of test-driven development, which if we haven't talked about it on this channel yet, then we definitely will. But it is an extension because test-driven development has the same process where you write your test and it fails, and then when you run the test, it's going to fail, and then you write the code to make your test pass. You don't write any more code that it takes to make your test pass. So this one just goes one step above, saying, all right, we're going to describe that behavior, and then we're going to write the step definition of how this should work. And then when you run it, it fails, and then you write the code to make the steps pass, and then you run it again, and it's going to pass. All right, so we'll jump into that a little bit more deeper. All right, so what is the actual purpose of BDD? So the focus is on defining the behavior of a system from the perspective of its stakeholders. So a lot of times in development, we will write it from the perspective of how the developers are going to approach it. And that actually brings us a bad light because it's not the developers who are going to be using the application. So if we write it from the viewpoint, from the vantage point of the stakeholders who are actually using the application, then we can approach development with a different mindset. All right. So this behavior is described in a language that is easily understandable both by technical and non-technical team members, often using a structured format known as given, when, then. And that structured format is called Gherkins, and we'll definitely see more of that as we go throughout our presentation. So BDD syntax, as I was just mentioning, Gherkins. So what the given means is it describes the preconditions or the initial state of the system. The when describes the actions or events that trigger a behavior, and the then describes the expected outcome or behavior of the system in response to the action. So basically, given is like, okay, what is the information? What is the data? What is the situation when we're getting started? Like everything needs to meet this criteria. And then when is like, okay, like when is describing exactly as it says actually, right? That's why it's so easy to use. When describes what is it that we're actually going to do. And then in the then, it's okay, once that when happens, what is the expected result? How should it respond? Like the definition of each of them makes it so easy to grasp this concept. All right, key principles of BDD. So these principles include encouraging collaboration between developers, testers, product owners, and other stakeholders from the very beginning of the development process. Back in the days, you would have the product owners and the stakeholders. They would write all the requirements, and then they'll deliver it to the developers and the testers, and there would be something lost in translation. So with the goal of test-driven development and behavior-driven development is to, and shifting left altogether, it's to get the developers, the testers, the product owners, and the stakeholders all together at the beginning so we can all be on the same page of what exactly we're going to build. By using the common language and focusing on this behavior, the common language of Gherkins, given, when, then, BDD helps ensure that everyone involved has a shared understanding of what needs to be built and tested. And they're used, like, I don't know if they still do this, but they would call it the Trinity, right? Where the business analyst or some type of stakeholder, the tester, and the developers would come together so they can write these stories, these scenarios, which we're going to get into. And now we have the foundation of the feature, the scenario, and the steps definition of what is going to be, of how we're going to build this application. And including, there was a saying is, there are no bugs in BDD. They're just like untested features or undefined features, So the goal of BDD is to reduce the likelihood of building bugs, because if you're building exactly to the specification, then there should be nothing falling inside or outside of it. Is that the case? That's debatable, but that is the intention, is to drastically reduce the amount of defects and bugs that can potentially come out of building it without having this terminology and this collaboration between the developers, testers, the product owners, and the stakeholders. All right, so the key components to BDD, Gherkins, as we mentioned, we're going to have an overview of the given, when, then structure, the feature files, which is, we're going to have a brief description of what the feature files do. The scenarios, we're going to define what scenarios are and why they're important, and then some of the tools that are used for behavior-driven development, Cucumber, SpecFlow, Behave, and many others. So Gherkins, and if anybody is a fan of pickles, Gherkins is another word for pickles, right? So Gherkins given sets up the preconditions or the initial state of the system before the action is performed. It describes the context in which test scenarios occur. So basically, if you're writing something that says, all right, let's say it's for a shopping cart, for instance, and you say, you want to test checkout. Given there are 5 items added to the shopping cart, when I click on the checkout now button, then I should get to a page where I can enter my payment information or give me a summary of my cart, something like that, right? But so that's where the given falls in. When the action or event that triggers the behavior being tested is described, it represents the specific action or input that is applied to the system. So like I was just saying, the when would be when I click on the checkout now button. Okay. Then describes the expected outcome or behavior resulting from the action specified in the when section. It represents the expected state of the system after the action has been performed. So then the payment options page is displayed, right? Depending on how your shopping cart works, whatever the then is, whatever you expect to happen after you click or after you do whatever is specified in the when. So that is the basics of Gherkins. And you can have many given steps. You can have many when steps. You can have many then steps. Right. So here's a Gherkins example. You have a feature. So, and we're going to get into the feature, but the feature is login functionality. Similar to what I was mentioning with the checkout. And so we'll talk about the feature after, but the scenario, successful login. So given when I am on the login page, when I enter valid credentials, username and password, I click on the login button, then I should be redirected to the dashboard and I should see a welcome message. So you see how there's an and that's connected to the then and an and connected to the when. And just means that, okay, this is another when step, and then or whatever step it's under is just another one of those steps. Feature file. So feature, this is the title of the feature being described. It provides a high-level overview of what functionality is being implemented or tested. A background. The background section is optional, but the background, it would pretty much be applied to all the different scenarios on in the feature file. So background, this section allows you to define preconditions that are common to all scenarios within the feature. So let's say you're testing a functionality where you need to be already logged in. So you would have a background that says, it pretty much says, given I am logged into the application. So now every time a scenario is run, it's going to perform what's in the background first, and then you can pick up from when I do this or when I do that, when I click logout, when I click login, when I click on edit profile, whatever the case may be, right? So now we get to scenario. Each scenario represents a specific test case or behavior that is being described. It starts with the scenario keyword followed by a brief description of the scenario. So, and the thing is with this is all of this is to help facilitate automation and regression testing because QA is super, super expensive, especially if it is being done manually all the time. So the whole BDD, TDD it's used to facilitate a stronger code base, a stronger testing presence. Because back in the days, some people would barely even write unit tests, which is one of the most fundamental parts of software development. So now we're also including automation, and because the same way that you can have unit tests for behavior-driven development, you can also have automated tests, whether you're using Selenium or API testing or whatever the case may be, for behavior-driven tests as well, behavior-driven development tests as well. All right, so continuing with the feature file, we also have a scenario outline. That allows for the definition of multiple scenarios using placeholders called scenario outline parameters that are placed with concrete values during execution. It uses the scenario outline keyword. So instead of using scenario, you do scenario outline, and then there's a little table at the bottom that follows. I think they call it that table example. And you would say, all right, so in the first run of this test, we're going to use the test data of user one, or the username user one, password one, and then the next line, which is going to run the test again, the same exact steps again, but it's going to say for the username user two, and the password is going to be user password two as well. So it allows you to use one test to run it in multiple scenarios. That's what the scenario outline is. Given, when, then, the Gherkin steps. That's the main body of the feature file, consists of the steps written in the given, when, then format, known as Gherkin steps, right? So we already looked at Gherkins. We looked at the how it's written, but that is the main body of the feature file. It's going to fall under the scenario or the scenario outline based on how you are applying that. All right, so more for the feature file. Like I was mentioning, and we saw in the feature file example, and but. Which, you know what, I use BDD format at work, and I never used a but. So that would be an interesting one to use, right? So and these keywords are used to continue a step scenario without starting a new one, and is typically used when the step logically follows a previous one, while but is used to indicate a contrasting condition. I have to look into that one. I never used the but before. So that's going to be interesting because I could see many cases in doing that. Tags, optional. So tags can be added to scenarios or feature descriptions to categorize or filter them. They are preceded by the @ symbol. So tags are pretty much, you can say, okay, I want to target all the tags that are login. So that way, let's say, let's execute the BDD test, and we're saying, I just want to run all tests that have a tag of login or all tests that have a tag of checkout. You can say, I want to run all tests that have a tag of login or checkout. And you can also say, I want to run all tags that have, or all tests that have a tag of login and checkout, right? So you can target it that way. Right, so let's look at this feature file example. So search functionality, as a user, I want to search for products on the website so that I can easily find what I'm looking for. Background. So remember, we were talking about background. Given I am on the homepage, so this means that it's always going to go to the homepage before we start executing our scenarios. So scenario, search for a product. When I enter iPhone in the search bar, then I click the search button. So the two went is I enter iPhone on the search bar, right? And then, or not even then. So when I enter iPhone on the search bar, when I click on search button, then what should logically happen after I do that, I should see a list of iPhone products. Now the scenario outline, searching with different keywords. When I enter, and then you have keyword placeholder in the search bar. So the keyword placeholders is iPhone and Samsung. So when I enter Samsung in the search bar and I click on the search button, then I should see a list of products related to iPhone. And then the same test is going to run again. So this is going to be 1.1. Then 1.2 is going to be when I enter Samsung in the search bar and I click the search button, then I should see a list of products related to Samsung. Like, very easy to understand. All right, so scenarios, which we just looked at, but scenarios represent individual test cases or behavior examples that describe how a particular feature should behave from the user's perspective. Scenarios are written in a structured, human-readable format using the given, when, then syntax, also known as Gherkin syntax, which at this point we should be super familiar with. Scenarios serve as executable specifications that help clarify requirements and ensure that developers, testers, and stakeholders have a shared, and I'm gonna repeat again, a shared understanding of the expected behavior of the software. They are often used as a basis for automated tests in behavior-driven development frameworks like Cucumber or Behave. I think I've set up Cucumber like a long time ago, but I use Behave on a regular basis, and we will be live streaming how to work with Behave and Cucumber as well. So, scenario example. So let's take a look at the scenario, right? So this scenario is user logs in with valid credentials. And now it has the Gherkin steps below. Given the user is on the login page, when the user enters valid username and password and clicks on the login button, then the user should be redirected to the dashboard and the user should see a welcome message. So the user seeing the welcome message is also part of the then, and clicking on the login button is part of the when, and you can also have ands for the given as well. So what are some tools that are used for BDD, for behavior-driven development? Behavior-driven development relies on a variety of tools and frameworks to facilitate collaboration, automate testing, and ensure that software meets the desired behavior specified by stakeholders. These tools provide features for writing, executing, and maintaining behavior-driven development specifications, enabling teams to collaborate effectively and ensure that software meets the desired behavior specified by the stakeholders. So, and real quick, the intention of behavior-driven development, you would write your requirements in this format. So you have your feature file. So you write a feature file, and inside the feature file, you're going to have your feature description. You're going to have the story written out, and then you're going to say your scenario. Each scenario is supposed to be outlined in BDD, right? So let's say you start developing, and the team agrees on the first scenario, and it's to create a homepage. So you say, when I go to, so given that I have a web browser opened, when I go to www.techcoachroute.dev, then the page to sign up for coaching or exclusive content should be loaded. And writing exactly that, it should just be that the developers and the testers take that exact feature file, put it into the code base, and generate the code that needs to be the placeholder code that needs to be written to build this. And you know what? I think that's going to be the example that we're going to use. We can use a very similar example to the one I just gave. We're going to write our feature file, copy that feature file into our application of choice, and then we are going to automate doing that. And if you're doing it for a new development, the developers are supposed to stick to what is defined in the feature file. Don't go outside of it. Don't do less. Don't do more. Stick to that. And then once we go to build a new feature, the trinity of the business analyst or product owner, the QA, and the developers are going to write another scenario file, and then that's exactly what we're going to build. All right. So, all right, we read that. All right. So cool. So let's go to the next one. Cucumber. So Cucumber is a tool. I know it more with Java, but apparently it is it's a part of a bunch of other languages as well. Cucumber is one of the most widely used BDD tools. It supports multiple programming languages such as Ruby, Java, JavaScript, and .NET. Cucumber uses Gherkin syntax for writing feature files and provides integration with various testing frameworks like JUnit, TestNG, and RSpec. Next up, we have Behave. So Behave is for Python. That is the one that I'm most familiar with because I use that every day at work. Behave is a Python-based BDD framework that uses Gherkin's syntax for writing feature files. It integrates well with Python testing frameworks such as unit tests and PyTest. Then we have SpecFlow for .NET. SpecFlow is a BDD tool for .NET that allows you to define feature files using Gherkin syntax and automate tests using .NET languages like C# and Visual Basics. It integrates with popular .NET testing frameworks like NUnit and MS Test. Next up, we have JBehave. JBehave is a Java-based BDD framework that enables the use of plain text stories written in Gherkin syntax. It integrates with JUnit and TestNG for test execution. Then we have RSpec, which is for Ruby. RSpec is a BDD framework for Ruby that allows developers to write executable specifications using plain English. It's often used in combination with Cucumber for Ruby projects. Then we have Gauge. I have never heard of Gauge in my life, but Gauge is an open source test automation framework that supports BDD using Markdown for writing specifications. It offers support for multiple programming languages, including Java, C#, Python, and Ruby. And then we have Karate, which is within Java. We spoke about Karate when we were talking about our APIs. Karate is an open source BDD framework for testing web services. It uses a domain-specific language based on Gherkin syntax and integrates seamlessly with Java-based projects. And then we have Robot Framework. Robot Framework is a generic test automation framework that supports BDD and keyword-driven testing. It allows for the creation of test cases using plain text syntax and supports a wide range of libraries and extensions. All right, so let's talk about the BDD workflow. So in BDD, this is the workflow you typically follow, right? Discovery and collaboration involving all the stakeholders. We're hashing it out, trying to figure out what we're going to do. We're discovering new ideas. What are the needs of our users? Then we have the definition of the scenarios, using examples to clarify behavior. So using real examples to clarify what should be happening. Next, we get to the development, implementing scenarios with automated tests. So we start to write out our tests that we write them to fail, and then we write the code to make them pass. Testing and validation, ensuring expected behavior, continuous improvement, revisiting and updating scenarios. So like I said, BDD is like TDD 3.0. Where you're integrating the actual requirements and the behaviors of users into your development process. Right. So what are some benefits of BDD, right? So there's two parts. There's technical benefits and there's business benefits. So let's start off with the business benefits. So BDD benefits businesses in this way: enhanced communication and understanding. Early, one of the most important parts, early detection of issues and misalignments. Most of the issues come from miscommunication. So while BDD is enhancing communication and understanding, it allows us to detect at an early stage what possible issues and misalignments that might happen, right? So it gets us all on the same page, and it's better customer-focused solutions because we're thinking about the behavior of our clients, of our customers, so we're able to put them at the center front, and we're able to give them better solutions, a better experience. So now, some of the technical benefits of BDD. Test automation and regression testing, it's like automatic. You have to build your test and your regression test in order to build your development code. And because of that, we have improved code quality and maintenance. It allows us to do it a little bit cleaner. Now, I'm going to say like the BDD, like it can get very out of hand if you do not do it well. And I have to constantly go in and clean up some of our BDD tests because we start like almost duplicating code and stuff like that. So regardless of how you are, if you're using BDD, TDD, etc., you always want to go back and clean up your code, refactor your code, make it nice, make it pretty, make it very fast and easy to understand. So what are some of the IDEs that are used for BDD? So definitely Visual Studio Code is one, VS Code. There's IntelliJ, which is the icon right here for IntelliJ, mainly used for Java. And then there's PyCharm. You can use it in WebStorm. You see me use WebStorm when we're doing like web-based stuff. So for mainly for HTML, Java. So there's that it can integrate in there. But yeah, VS Code, probably Eclipse, things like that. And there are plugins, BDD plugins. So for instance, there is like feature file plugins for PyCharm and Cucumber plugins for IntelliJ. Probably the same thing for VS Code. I'm not a big VS Code user, but I'm pretty sure it exists if you just search for it. So let's get into some examples of BDD, right? BDD in action. So e-commerce. Many e-commerce platforms use BDD to ensure that their websites function as expected and provide a seamless shopping experience. BDD scenarios might cover features like user authentication, product search, adding items to the cart, and checkout processes. Very similar to what I was mentioning earlier. Another example is the financial industry. Banks, insurance companies, and financial institutions utilize BDD to verify the functionality of their application, such as online banking systems, mobile banking apps, or insurance claims processing system. BDD scenarios can ensure that transactions are processed accurately, account information is secure, and compliance requirements are met. Next up, we got healthcare. BDD is valuable in the development of healthcare software applications, including electronic healthcare records, EHR systems, telemedicine platforms, and medical device software. Scenarios can be written in to test patient registration, appointment scheduling, medical records management, and interoperability with other healthcare systems. Then we have travel. How is BDD used in travel? BDD is used in the development of travel booking platforms, hotel reservation systems, and airline tickets. Scenarios can verify features such as searching for flights or accommodations, booking reservations, managing itineraries, and processing payments. And then we have gaming. BDD can be used in gaming. Game development studios utilize BDD for testing game mechanics, user interfaces, multiplayer functionality, and in-game transactions. BDD scenarios can verify features like player movement, combat systems, quest completion, and in-app purchase. And I just remember this right now. When we're doing our morning challenges, we're going through the Chaos Camp. We actually did a little bit of BDD using Python and Behave, I believe. So we do have some examples of BDD on the site, but we've never actually went through a comprehensive overview of BDD like we are doing today. So what are some challenges and limitations to BDD? There's definitely going to be a learning curve because for non-technical stakeholders, while it's easy to understand the terminology, right? There's still going to be a learning curve because it's a new adoption of how we speak. It's a new language, of how can we define something in a given when then. Another challenge and limitation is there can be an overemphasis on automation over business outcomes. No, we always want to focus on business outcomes. We want to run up the money. We want to run up the bag, right? We don't miss. So we have to make sure that we're not focusing like, oh, we have to automate, where it's like, okay, is this feature that we're building, is it useful to the business? And let's automate enough to make sure that we are getting that business outcome out of it. And another major challenge, which I think is probably the biggest challenge in BDD, is alignment on BDD with team workflows. Almost 10 years ago now, I joined a company, and the director, I think it was the VP of software engineering, he really wanted to move towards BDD, but it was to get buy-in was so difficult from the developers. But I mean, time and time again, it would prove that hey, BDD is useful, but the developers they just couldn't wrap their mind around it, and he never really pushed it as he could have. So we never really went that route. But I think it would have been an excellent opportunity. All right. So how do we overcome some of these challenges? Right. So consistent training and communication. I think that overcomes a lot of challenges, like having good communication and training people on how to make it happen. And then incremental adoption and feedback loops. You don't just say, all right, we're here at nothing and we're going to go to 100 in 2 days. No, you have to, all right, let's start creating a feature file, and then let's go step by step, and then let's always ask questions. How is it going? How is it working? And work through that, right? So I think it is possible, but it's just a lot of times we like to stick to what we are comfortable with instead of going outside of our comfort zone and say, okay, how can we be more efficient, more effective? And BDD can quite possibly do that. The same way I feel about TDD. I think test-driven development is super, super important. But a lot of times developers prefer to write the code first and then think of the testing scenarios, as opposed to think about the test first and then write the code around that, So it just takes some adoption, takes some and feedback loops. All right, what are some best practices for behavior-driven development? So, of course, foster open communication and collaboration. Always be open to work with people. Always be open to let people know what the status is, and if you're having any issues, right? Very, very important. Focus on business value and user stories. I know as tech people, as engineers, as testers, we're like, oh, the quality of the code, the quality of the code, the quality of the code. Yes, the quality of the code is super important, but we have to make sure, because we can write absolutely amazing code, but if nobody's using our software, then where's the business value? What is the purpose of doing it in the first place, right? Involve stakeholders early and often. Very, very important to get the feedback of the stakeholders. And that's why I always preach about Agile, Scrum methodology. You build it and you get feedback. Build it, get feedback. Build it, get feedback. Use BDD to support, not replace existing processes. So BDD is not here to be a replacement. It's here to be an enhancement. How can we do things better? How can we integrate this terminology so that everyone can be on the same page? All right? So, in conclusion, what did we cover today? We covered what BDD is, what are some of the key principles of BDD, the key components of BDD, the workflow that behavior-driven development follows, and then we talked about some of the benefits of behavior-driven development, the tools and frameworks that can support behavior-driven development. So we looked at some real-world scenarios through e-commerce, travel, healthcare, financial, gaming. We spoke about some of the challenges and limitations to behavior-driven development, and then we wrapped it up with some best practices. And, right, let's go to the full screen. Let's go back to full screen. And that's our presentation for today, right? So much information on BDD. I always had in mind to do it, but it was particularly requested in the comments, and I was like, you know what, this is a good time to do it. And there you have it. If you are interested in learning more about BDD, there is a book that I read through about almost 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, called BDD in Action. I will put a link to the Amazon link of the book in the description of the video, because it is, if you're interested in BDD, it's going to pretty much show you how to get it started, how to get it to work. It's going to go in depth about I think it's based on Java. It's going to go in depth about Cucumber, how to set up your feature files, how to write the scenarios, how to properly write your gherkins, and like what they should include, what they shouldn't include to properly do BDD, right? Very, very good book. And I think behavior-driven development, it could take off, but adoption is always so hard and so slow. Honestly, if developers aren't picking up on test-driven development and they still want to do things the old way, it's hard to see how they're going to pick up on BDD, which is like I said, it might be TDD 5.0. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Do you find BDD interesting? Maybe as there is a new generation of developers coming up, that can be the catalyst to get adoption of test-driven development as well as behavior-driven development. We shall see. Let me know what you think. I'm curious. Do you use BDD? Anyone watching the video, do you use BDD? Do you find it helpful? Or do you prefer to write all your code and then think about, oh, I can write a unit test around this. I can write a unit test around that. I'm curious. I've been doing my best to implement the test-driven development methodology in a lot of, like, whether I was going through building the mobile app, or I am working on the codes generator app for with my Tech Barbarians, trying to write my tests before I write my development code. It does take some getting used to, but trust me, if you do it, it is very, very well worth it. All right. Anyways, I'm gonna wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hopefully this gave you tons of value. That's my goal here, to add value into your life. And yeah, that's it. If you haven't done so already, do me a big favor. Go ahead and like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you can know every single time that we go live and drop new content. And if you are in need of one-on-one coaching with me, Tech Coach Ralph, go over to www.techcoachralph.dev, where you can sign up for exclusive content from me as well as one-on-one coaching with me, where we will get to work. I will put you to work, right? I will put you to work so that you can ramp up as quickly as possible to be work ready. You know, how Jay says, ask about me. Ask about me. We put in the work. We don't miss. We don't miss. All right. Anyhow, I'm gonna get out of here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful Wednesday and a wonderful rest of your week. I will see you on live tomorrow night, Thursday night. We're gonna do some more QA work. All right. With that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Tech Coach Ralph, and we are out.
If you enjoyed the fascinating information shared in this video and you want more, be sure to hit the subscribe button to Tech Coach Ralph to be notified for new videos.